ready.
Ready? We're going to call this meeting to order at 6:30 on the dot. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristen Liddell. I'm the Finance Committee Chair. Welcome back for round two. I want to again thank Ms. Mangini, Ms. Borges, and everybody who helped put together the budget presentation that we saw the other night for 2024-2025. Tonight we start to review the various sections of the budget, starting with salaries and benefits and the curriculum budget as well. Just a couple things to keep in mind to the committee. Just remember that we need to, in the end of all of this, deliver a fiscally responsible budget to the board and ultimately the town. That's our goal. And that being said, we need to remember the circumstances we're under with, the fiscal cliff that we've been talking about for months and even years maybe at this point. There's difficult discussions that need to be had and will be had, and we need to, all stay together and be on the same page. And if you have a question, please ask. Our job is to determine, needs versus wants and, everything we can to better aid the staff and the students in the district and get them where they need to be. And moving forward. So I think I'm going to turn over to Ms. Mangini for the presentation tonight.
Sounds good. Okay, I know we have a lot of information to cover and we give you a lot of information, so please don't hesitate to ask any questions. We do just ask that you hold your questions until the end of each area of presentation. So I'll go over salaries and benefits, and then there'll be ample opportunity for you to ask your questions, and then Heather will take over with curriculum, and again, you'll have an opportunity at that point to ask questions for us to answer. I just wanted to comment on two handouts that I left for the board and the finance committee members. You do have salary variance report, and I know that those of you who were with us last year through this budget process found this helpful, because oftentimes you're looking at all these pages of salaries and there's differences year over year that may not make a whole lot of sense just looking at it. And Susan Nicholson did an incredible job with this. It takes her a lot of time, but she's very thoughtful about it. And she really highlighted those areas that are significant. So hopefully her explanations can help to answer some of your questions, but by all means, as we walk through it, I'm happy to try to clarify anything. And the second handout this evening, we were asked for information by school as far as positions. We don't really have organizational charts by school, but we could in fact provide you with the position listing that is at the back of your book in the appendix. We simply did it for you by schools and by location. So hopefully that gives you just another way of looking at the information. So I hope you find it helpful. And we did, thanks to Heather, she showed me how to use a copier for 3-hole punching. So you can just put them into your book. Hopefully that's helpful as well. Okay, so we are really happy to have this opportunity to review the superintendent's budget request for fiscal year 25 by categories. And over the next few weeks, each area of the budget will be presented, so it will allow you the chance to ask questions for a clear understanding of the entire financial plan. And once again, we do ask, if at all possible, that you request information or ask questions prior to each section's review. Of course, if something comes up during the meeting, we're happy to do our best to answer them at that point as well. So to begin this evening, we're going to review salaries and benefits, and then, as I said, we will move over to the curriculum budget. I'm going to begin the discussion of salaries and benefits, and you will see here that I did highlight the two areas of the entire budget summary that are devoted to these areas. Again, using the National Center for Education Statistics, which falls under the Federal Department of Education's guidelines for object codes, and that is how we are presenting this information to you and how we will be covering it. So again, the 100 object codes are salaries, and that is the tab in your book under 100, and the 200 are benefits. So I think an important start to all of this is, as you can see, salaries and benefits total more than 74% of our budget. So obviously it's a big area of our budget, and it's rather unique to school systems. We're actually slightly below the national average, which is much closer to 80%. So it's the district's largest expense. Let's take a little closer look. First, staffing includes these positions that were added to the general operating budget for fiscal year 25 that were previously expensed to the ESSER grant. We did share information. This is the same slide that you saw on Monday evening, but we thought it was worth repeating because it does have a significant impact to the budget. With these total positions and benefits, it's about $1.8 million, which is in and of itself a 1.5% increase over fiscal year 24. So it is significant. This listing of positions were presented to you on Monday evening as well by Heather as new positions for a new program or to expand a program. So we are looking at an addition of these positions associated with the STRIVE program, in addition to a new state mandate requiring districts to educate special education students through age 22, which is our reason for the 2 custodian/drivers. And as I had mentioned, we also are requesting 2 additional district vehicles, passenger vans, that we will be able to transport our STRIVE students since we anticipate larger numbers. And we found that we will need the drivers associated with them. We've talked about it a little bit, and we'll get into it more with transportation, but we are transporting a lot of students, many of whom are homeless right now. We are obligated to take them. So our current staffing of drivers have a very full schedule. And I think my other Susan, I often joke that I am bookended by Susans. My secretary, Susan Hughes, and our finance director, Susan Nicholson, are like my right and left hands that I really couldn't do without, but they are so good at what they do. Susan Hughes, again, we'll talk about it more with transportation, but she is constantly, she has her color-coded spreadsheet each and every day, checking how to best optimize our drivers so that we do not have to contract with outside vendors for all of this transportation. Okay, so certified salaries. I'm just finding my own page. I want to help you a little bit. This is on page 15. As I said, salaries fall under Object Code 100. And again, that is in accordance with the basic account structure for uniform financial reporting by state agencies and public schools. Our certified salaries are included in Object Code 111, and they cover all teaching and administrative positions that require certification by the State Department of Education. This object code also includes activity and coaching stipends, as well as non-union administrators. And this is the breakdown. You have subsequent pages in your book that further break down each of these categories. And as I noted at the onset, you were provided with the explanation summary of the salary account variances. And oftentimes the reasons for these variances are due to changes in personnel within a position. So perhaps someone left the district at a higher or lower salary. So now when we went to budget from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25, we had to increase or decrease accordingly. And there are notations to that effect. Also, sometimes we have to add or reduce a classroom due to our actual updated enrollment as of the start of the new school year. We do have a lot of last minute registrations throughout the summer, and particularly when I say last minute, it's like late August and September. So we're always wrestling with that. Overall, the increase to our certified salaries budget, as you can see, is slightly over 4%. And this increase is primarily a result of negotiated general wage increases and union step increases. And I just think it's worth mentioning at this point that this also includes our anticipated retirements at this point in time. Right now, we only have intents, and as many of you probably can understand and may actually realize, is when we do have teachers retiring, we have to be very careful about what kind of retirement savings that we are anticipating. Oftentimes at the elementary level, we do in fact recognize a savings. But when we get to high school teaching positions that are more challenging to fill, more specialized, like science and math, and even special education teachers, more often than not, we're finding that we really don't have a savings. So as we looked at those intents, we did take about $270,000 reduction already. We feel that was reasonable. Most of the individuals on that list right now happen to be elementary teachers. But again, they are not committed or do not have to commit until April 1st. So, we kind of hold our breath that we're taking a reasonable amount. And I think at this point, we feel it is. And we will continue to monitor that as we get more information. If there's any belief that we can come to you between now and the end of the month with further reductions for retirements, we'll certainly share that information. Our non-certified salaries fall under, again, it's Object Code 100, but it's 112, and you'll find that on page 32 of your book. Non-certified salaries include all employees occupying positions that do not require state certification, such as our secretaries, custodians, CIAs, lunchroom workers, IT technicians. The increase for this object code is 0.54. It's a lot lower than previous years, but I want to make it clear that this is primarily due to the fact that we moved our substitute services or costs to a service. So there is a reduction there of $1,415,000. If that line was still budgeted as though we were hiring the substitutes, it would have been an 11.3% increase. And again, the increases include step increases, wage increases, but that 11.3 would primarily have been due to the number of special education classroom instructional aides that we are proposing to move from ESSER to the general operating budget. So I do want to talk a little bit about the certified substitute salaries. As previously mentioned, this account is reflecting a reduction of the 1.4 million roughly, and it is due to the district moving to Kelly Services for substitute hiring. So since we are now using a vendor, these substitutes are no longer district employees, so in accordance with NCES reporting, we cannot pay for this through a salary account as we did in the past, which was the 100 object code. This has to be paid through the 300 object code, which is professional services. And again, I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out at you, but you'll see it more clearly. I think it's Monday night that we'll be looking at the 300s. So you will see a corresponding increase of $1,415,000 in that line item. We did leave $15,000 in this account for teacher coverage expense. Sometimes we do have need for a sixth class, various nuances that come up throughout the year. So we did want to make certain that we had some funding set aside for our actual staff that we would be paying. So that brings us to benefits. Benefits include what you see here. It's employee health insurance, dental insurance, group term life, long-term disability, defined contribution plan costs for non-certified employees, It's the employer tax liability, unemployment, and other benefits such as custodial clothing allowances and funding for unused sick leave payouts at retirement, which is a contractual benefit. With regard to health insurance, we've been pretty fortunate here in the last few years. Before I arrived, so I take absolutely no credit for this, there was a contract or an agreement made with Anthem, and Anthem was brought in, and there were guarantees that our increases would not be beyond 7%. So for the last few years, we were very lucky to be locked into that single-digit renewal increase when many of our counterparts throughout the state were seeing double digits. For this year, that is no longer on the table. However, we are currently looking at an 11.6% base increase, and that's actually pretty reasonable. Anthem presents renewals in such a way that you start off with the highest, and they will give you that for budgetary purposes because they understand that as school districts, we usually are working on our budgets early and we need that information. What they tell us is 11.6 is probably where you will be. We will not go over that amount, but there is a possibility that we may lower it. So they watch our claims month to month. They do a 12-month rolling average. And if our claims start to trend a little bit better, we could have a slight reduction. So we're working with our broker, and he keeps us informed. We're hoping to hear something maybe by the end of the month, and that's always the challenge. We don't always get the information completely until our budget here at the Board of Ed is completed. So even if there are reductions, if we have to further reduce based on the town appropriation, there are a few areas that we are watching for potential reductions. I honestly don't feel it will be significant. I will share that much with you. But what I do want to talk about for a moment, because it might have caught your eye while I'm talking about 11.6% base increase, and you're seeing 14.94% there. A couple of things to remember. The increase reflected on page 49 is higher. It's actually a 19.94% because it's only the line for health insurance, and then you have the other line for retiree insurance. So this line combines both, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I just want to remind you that the reason for this increase being a little bit higher than it would have been is because of that $1 million ARPA grant that the town gave us last year outside of our operating budget. It was helpful, it saved physicians, but we utilized it to pay $1 million of health insurance, so we actually lowered the health insurance line item appropriation by $1 million. So that's why you're comparing what we originally had in the budget was 13.9 million, and what you're seeing in your book for fiscal year 24 is 12.9. So that's why there is such a jump, or appears to be such a jump. This line, our total increase, why it isn't 19 and it's down to 14, is some of you who were on the board last year may recall that with retiree insurance, we had negotiated a really good renewal. Well, we did that again this fall. And what we did was save $385,000 by moving the prescription portion of the plan to Anthem. We had another vendor last year. But we also did an adjustment to the formulary plan. And this not only benefits the district for savings, but it also lowers the cost to our employees. So it's really a win-win, and there's really minimal difference. I don't think the average employee will see any changes to their benefits. So we're not doing terribly with health insurance, but it's always a big cost. The other item here I wanted to point out was unemployment. As you can see, it's doubled. And honestly, this is our best estimate at this point. What I think I need to remind all of us is that by having all these positions in ESSER, if we can't fund all of them and these people are let go and they can't find jobs, we are now responsible for their unemployment. The way our presentation is to you at this time, it looks like primarily there'll be about 30 plus tutors that will be losing their jobs. They're all ESSER funded positions. I can honestly tell you when I do the math, worst case scenario, we need way more money than this, but I'm cautiously optimistic that there will be a percentage of those people who will be filing for unemployment. So we did our best guesstimate, but we do feel that we do have to raise this. And perhaps as we move through this process, we can take another look at that. But I think I'm being very conservative, and I think that number is low. I'll be very honest with you, but we have no way of knowing it. It's another one of those areas in a budget that's a variable, and time will tell. Okay, so that pretty much covers salaries and benefits. I realize that those are really large areas, and I think the overview hopefully is giving you an idea of how we approach this and what we, the assumptions that we made in getting to these appropriations that we've presented in your financial plan. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ms. Lance.
I have to talk into the microphone. Pam, could you explain to me why you have to pay unemployment to those tutors? Their position ends June 30th, correct?
That is correct. What happens is if they go and collect, we always have a percentage of it, correct, Courtney? There's always, we can, I don't know if you want to add to what I'm saying, but.
Yeah, we are responsible for that. They'll do a look back period and we're
That's the
responsible for
word.
their employment. So they can collect until they find something else, and even if someone resigns, if they find another position and then they leave that position, if we're in their look back period, we're responsible for the unemployment.
And even though they have no benefits from the town at all, they can still collect unemployment.
Yes.
To that, the full, we're responsible for the full, because she said a percentage, which is.
No, I was talking about a percentage of the individuals, but we're responsible for the full. I think the only time we would be responsible for a percentage of their full unemployment is what Courtney was explaining as a look back. I couldn't think of the word, so thank you. A look back period. So if they have worked for someone else as well in that period of time, we would only have a percentage of that expense.
So, and I have one more question, Pam. They can't do, maybe Courtney, do they collect during the summer, or does that start in September if they don't get another job?
They don't typically collect in the summer. So people who are coming back next fall wouldn't be able to collect in the summer. I'm uncertain if they would allow them because they're not coming back to collect. It's possible.
Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up on that too. If their contract position is only a year long, is that the only look-back period that we're looking at, or
Well,
9 months long?
Yeah, the state looks back by quarters.
Right.
So I'd have to research what period that falls into, but at some point that year is going to fall into their look back period.
But because it wasn't a full year of employment, is it an truncated amount by the state?
I'm not
I
really
am not really sure. You would be surprised at what we actually have on our unemployment invoices each month. I mean, we can pick up a small amount of even coaches, right, who
Yeah.
now are filing for unemployment. So normally, I will say that the state is probably more favorable to the employee. And as a municipal government, we pay the full amount because we don't pay into the unemployment the way a private employer would.
Ms. Lynn?
I have another question about retiree insurance. Can you explain to the group here that Stratford has 2 different plans for their retirees and why we have 2 different plans for health insurance?
2 different plans, probably, I'm not really sure which plans you're referring to because we do have plans for different unions because
Okay,
they were
teachers.
set up differently. So we have teachers, we have non-union.
Right, I guess
Yes.
I'm talking about teachers, as I know that some retirees have the town insurance still, and some have the Connecticut Teachers Retirement Fund.
And I think basically those are based on when you began, when you retired, because the plans just changed through the years. So you're kind of grandfathered into one plan and then a new plan. And TRB does require you to go through TRB as well.
So is it worth looking at Connecticut Teachers Retirement Fund for everybody? Is it less expensive? I mean, 'cause we have two in my house. We have one and we have one.
I'd be
But
happy
I'm
to
just
look-
very curious about that.
I'd be happy to look into that further, but to the best of my knowledge, it really doesn't matter what the teacher is choosing, because at the end of the day, the TRB subsidy will come to the district and you pay a certain amount as well.
Right.
But you have the choice of what to choose. What we end up getting is basically the same as a district. But I'd be happy to look into that a little bit further.
In your spare time.
No worries. I have Susan.
Question, Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Ms. Mangini. The town has an anthem plan. Are we using, I just don't know the answer. Are we using the state employees plan, or are we
We
a
are
separate
not.
plan, we have our own plan?
Yeah, we worked with our broker each year to really examine which plan will be more beneficial, more cost effective for us, and so far each year it's been no contest. It is a lot more expensive for Stratford Public Schools to go with the state plan right now.
Any other questions? Mr. Henry?
So with the ESSER grants, I know since I've been on the board, you've been telling us we need to address it. For 2 years, we have done absolutely nothing about it. But in the beginning, ESSER grant was put out there, and a number of positions were created specifically by the ESSER grant. You know, I know some of our regular positions were dumped into there, but how many of the positions were created specifically with ESSER funds that were not existent prior to the existing grant?
Many were because of need. So the tutors, we had to do, if you recall, we had to do an entire plan for ESSER, how we were going to spend the funding. And a couple of those items was in-school tutor support and after-school support of students because of the learning loss that they experienced during the pandemic. So that's where all those tutor positions came from. We knew they would be temporary, but nevertheless, we also knew most of them would go away, but I think there's been real value added to them, and I know the schools would love to keep the majority of them. We simply can't afford to do that. So as we said earlier, we did at least try to retain 12 of them. And that would be going into Alliance, I believe, because now I'm getting confused. I believe it was Alliance that we had those slated for, again, pending approval. But in addition to that, our special ed costs, for example, were increasing because of the students moving in and their needs. So there are many classroom instructional aids that we really couldn't absorb initially through our operating budget, and many of those are one-to-one, so there was really no choice. So there's a whole lot, that's what those 25 CIAs moving over are. And we've tried our best to first fit them into grants that allow them, and we did that as well. So at this point, we have a net of 25 to add.
So the tutors were, in a large part, created through ESSER. I think the climate specialists as well were
Correct.
Alliance.
Yes, definitely the climate specialists, and we are evaluating all of these positions that we are hoping, as the slides indicated, to move to Alliance. Climate specialists have not been suggested to be added to the general operating budget. But again, I know Heather will be working with her team to put together the Alliance grant plan, as she is already working with the program manager, as she mentioned on Monday evening, to see what is even permissible, because we couldn't bring this to you without knowing that this is pretty much okay with the state. They have to give us their final blessing, but we are further fine-tuning that plan before we even bring it to the board.
And I know we had asked for that, Director mentioned it, and I know you're working on it, but as soon as we can, if we
Sure.
have that, we can see it, just so we get a grasp of what goes where and what. The STRIVE program, we had 310,000 in new positions, and I think you mentioned there would be savings created. is that already been accounted for into this budget, the savings, or?
So the students would have, if we don't create a larger program to meet the needs of the students, they'll be outplaced.
Mhm.
And if we outplace the students, it would cost the district around $860,000. That's on the new initiative data that was turned in. So rather than having us have to add $860,000 to our budget, we're adding 300 so we can house them and keep the kids.
Gotcha. McKinney-Vento, who determines where those kids go? And how many students do we have currently?
49.
49 on McKinney-Vento? Okay.
And I am your McKinney-Vento liaison.
Okay. And I know there's always a question, you know, if I guess if they're homeless, where their last school was before how was that determination made?
McKinney-Vento's a little complicated, so sometimes it's shared. So if you were living in Stratford, okay, and you lost your housing for whatever reason, and you are now in West Haven in a motel,
Mhm.
okay, and I call West Haven and I say, are you able to transport the kids? And West Haven says, I don't have anyone to transport, and I say, okay, well, I'll pay for transportation and you're gonna pay for 50% of that, so you split it.
Mhm.
So it really depends, and when you are covered under McKinney-Vento, technically, we work with the families so that they can choose. The idea behind McKinney-Vento is that children don't get their education disrupted because things are going on within the family that are disruptive.
Mhm.
So the families can enroll in another school, which then I'd still be responsible for 50% of the costs, regardless of where a child is gonna go. We try not to disrupt, so you try to stay in the school the children are in, for the duration of the school year. As the McKinney-Vento liaison, I then evaluate and send letters if a student's housing becomes appropriate. And I say, okay, now you have appropriate housing. But the thing for you to understand as a district is once you are on McKinney-Vento, you're on McKinney-Vento for that whole year. Okay, your reevaluation period is the end of the school year. So even if you find adequate housing in Milford, you still get to stay in Stratford till the end of this school year.
And just, she brought it up, you're the McKinney-Vento liaison?
Yep.
And I could be wrong, but I thought that was typically the superintendents. Are you that liaison now because?
The superintendent can designate who they want to designate as the liaison. So I have been your McKinney-Vento liaison now for 2 years.
Is it typical that?
I think it's a lot of different people. It can be the superintendent. When Janet was here, she was the McKinney-Vento liaison, but superintendents are allowed to designate.
Okay. On the assistant superintendent salary line item, page 19, my recollection could be off, but I thought I remembered the superintendent was about $225,000 a year, and the assistant was about $185,000, which is about $410,000. If my recollection is correct, and we have basically $440,000 in that line item. Are there other benefits or other stipends that go into that line item, or is that purely
What page are you on? I'm sorry, what page?
on page 19, on the assistant superintendent salary line item?
I believe, and I can double check that for you, but I believe it's probably the additional monies because you do a contribution to a 403B or 457, and those are taxable for superintendents and assistant superintendents, so they have to appear in that line. So it not only includes the salary, it includes some benefits as well. But I can give you a complete breakdown.
Yeah, and again, my recollection could be wrong, yeah, but that's, so, just so we know kind of how we get to that spot. And I think that's all I had for now. I will yield the floor.
Any other questions? Mr. Brandon?
It would be, when did ESSER start in the district?
It started in 2021. I think
For me,
2021.
it would be helpful to sort of get a simple table of the various funding streams that would fund the district. I think if you can go from the fiscal year actual 21 through the actual 24, then the budget, or the actual fiscal year on 23, the budget of 24, and then the proposed at 25, I think you're going to see the ins and outs of ESSER, or general fund, ESSER, titles, the IDA, Alliance, there's just so many, we moved from left pocket to right pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And we know this, for me, it'd be helpful to know how much ESSER is being moved into the general fund, how much ESSER is being dropped, and how much ESSER is going on to Alliance and not the general fund.
Okay, that, you have all that, but
I don't
because it's
see
in
that table.
pieces,
Yeah, I don't see
I'll
that
be happy to
table.
put it together. No worries, we can get that for you.
And then you made a comment about the anticipated retirements, you built that in, that's routine practice, we've done that in the prior years.
Yes, well, since I've been here anyway, we have tried to estimate, we've gone back historically, but we also take a look at, our list of staff, our teaching staff, if we feel they're close, if we think there might be a few more retiring, and this is the period of time that we really view it very carefully. HR does have a session in January. We can have 30 or 40 people sign up for it, but that certainly doesn't mean we're gonna have 30 or 40 retirements. So again, we use historical data as well as looking at the actual list of employees with their service time and their age, and then we kind of make an educated guess. We start off conservative because I always worry that we're, first of all, not going to recognize those numbers of retirements, and secondly, that we're not going to recognize the savings that are going for. So we're cautious about that one.
Oh, that's perfect. The one concept I would like to chase down is budgeting and a negative salary adjustment. I think when I was looking through the newspapers, there's always a concern about the surplus. And I get, if you spend 99% of your budget, that's a really good thing. There's a reason why this is called itemized estimate of expenditures. Even when I was here, we emphasized that, but I think it would be interesting to see if you can run the fiscal year end 22-23, the MOC's 100-200 budget to actuals. That I think will give you an idea of what your salary adjustment, for lack of a better word, surplus is. So when you as you said prior, when you budget the full anticipated salary, there's going to be the ins and outs of all those other benefits. Most of your salary surplus, or most of your budget surplus is in salaries.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think the only thing I would say to caution all of us is the simple fact that those were not normal years, right? It's the pandemic. We were struggling to fill positions. So even though we can take a look and we know exactly, I mean, we have spreadsheets, we know exactly where all those savings were, we aren't confident that that's going to be reflected in fiscal year 25 or 26.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely provide you with that information.
And just the last question I have is on page 32, the certified subs.
Yes.
So I get it's a wash between the 100s and the 300s moving from. So how do you come up with the 1.4 million substitute service on page 57 when the run rate in 22 and 23 is 824 and 878?
That is an absolutely perfect question, because I would ask it too. What we were struggling with in those years was the inability to even get subs. The last couple of years have really been challenging within all school districts throughout the state, and we have principals here who can certainly attest to that. Also, we weren't able to get interns for a couple of years. So we were struggling as well for a variety of reasons. I know in fiscal year 22, we actually, I believe, Courtney, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we weren't even allowing interns in the building because of the pandemic at that point. So there were considerable savings. In addition, last year, the board recognized that not only could we not fill substitute positions, but in looking at our surrounding communities, we pay so much less to our subs that we did increase. Part of it was we had to increase some of it just to meet minimum wage, but we also increased it to be a little bit more competitive, and we're still below the average. So for all those reasons, that's why there's a jump there. And that's actual. Our budget was higher than that last year.
And you're seeing in fiscal year, the year we're sitting in, you're seeing closer to the 1.4 projection?
We are. At this point, we are. We are getting interns this year, which is helpful. And we are filling, through Kelly, we are filling most of our building subs as well, which is really helpful.
Does that line item also include the the fee to Kelly?
Yes, that's just built in, and we get billed, I think, weekly on that, so yes.
We had a similar discussion last year about the actuals versus what we were budgeting, so.
Yeah, and if you look, fiscal year '24, the adopted budget was $1,430,000. So we actually level funded it for this year. But Ben's absolutely right. Looking at the actuals, a very, very reasonable question is, why is it so much more? But if you go back to what those budgets were for those years, which again, I'll be happy to provide you with that as well, you'll see that it really wasn't much of an increase year over year.
The same was logic on page 46, the 200s, the dental run rate. 730,
Right.
736, 713, and then the budget of 900, and then dropping to 840. Just
I'm
the
sorry,
run
what
rate-
page are you on?
46, the 200s, the
Oh,
summary.
yes, thank
The
you.
dental insurance, you have a 2 years of actual, dental's relatively stable,
It is,
insurance.
but what we found was during COVID, and those were COVID years, particularly fiscal year '22, people weren't actually going to the dentist. I mean, I will tell you personally, we waited a year and a half before we went back to the dentist, so that's
Are
what
we
we were finding.
self-insured with dental?
Yes, we are.
Ms. Mangini, on page 25, I might have missed it when you were going through everything. It looks like you broke out the special ed teacher salaries from last year's 5,000,004. You broke it out by school instead. So there's about a $450,000 increase in sped teachers.
Another big
Is
question.
there a reason why it was broken out separate? And yeah.
On the variance report, I think it's the very last page, you will see that when we were doing our annual budget state report on our budget year, the state told us that we needed to separate our salaries for special education by locations. So that is the result of that change.
I wasn't able to see, I ran the total myself to just see what the difference was because it doesn't, there's not a comparison year to year for it, that's why.
And that's exactly it. Actually, if you go to the special ed teachers, above it, you'll see all the blank spaces, and those should add up pretty close to what they are.
Thank you.
Mr. Dia?
This work. Thank you. Hi Pam.
Hello there.
Question for you and Ms. Borges. Are we having any ongoing conversations with the town about any further consolidation of resources? Again, from a 1-year plan versus to a 5-year plan. Has that conversation been had? Can it be had? I'd just like to know.
What kind of services are you considering?
Just from an annual review of the overall budget. I'm not pinpointing anything in particular, but I think it's something that, at the very least, between the Board of Ed, being that Board of Ed is the largest department of the entire town, and the town as a whole, we can have a conversation about that. Maybe there's absolutely nothing. I don't know. I know that from a health insurance standpoint, you guys always run everything by each other. I know that from a utility standpoint, we run everything by each other. From a facility standpoint, we run each other by each other. I just don't know. Is there opportunities in HR? Is there opportunities in finance? I don't know.
I can tell you that I've had conversations with Dawn just about sharing various softwares and certain things, and I'm gonna back this up. This is an area that I know a whole lot about, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've taught horses on shared services, and when I was on the town side, I tried to do a lot of the same things, but what I found, and I mean this very sincerely, not flippantly, please understand that, but honestly, there are so many nuances to the education side that when you look to potentially even absorb finance, it's really not a savings because you need people with that expertise. It's not, I can tell you firsthand, I was a town finance director, and Ben can share the same thing. When you come over, he reversed, but when I came over to the board side, there was a whole learning curve. And I think not only do you need that level of expertise, but I think we underestimate the amount of work that is done on both offices. So is there a potential? Possibly. I'm just not convinced that not only would you save, you probably wouldn't save much money, but I don't think the efficiencies would be there. And when you speak of HR, please be very careful, because personnel services within a town, and believe me, I know that firsthand, I've been working with police departments for years and public works. When you compare that to what is required for teachers and teacher certifications and movements amongst teachers, it is a full-time job in and of itself. So again, the only thing I would caution for those two particular areas is the fact that A, again, I don't think there would be efficiencies, and B, I don't really think you would save money. Now, are there other areas? I know, by the way, the town purchasing agent, I can't say enough wonderful things about, Phil Ryan is absolutely wonderful, and we're always trying to work together to go out to bid to maybe save money for toilet tissue and paper towels. Again, we struggle a little bit because our dispensers throughout the town aren't the same as the dispensers that are in the schools. But those are the types of areas, to your point, Chris, that I think are really worth looking at and trying to do together. Since I arrived here, I've worked with Chris and Dawn and Phil to make certain that we're all doing the gasoline bids together, so that we're taking advantage of economies of scale. You know, the more that we can go out to bid for, hopefully a little bit more savings. So we are doing those types of things. We work with them with utilities as well. And we'll continue to explore areas.
And that's fine, and everything you said, I completely understand, it's well noted. You know, at the end of the day, and that's why I bring this up, because we're all here to make sure that we have the best budget possible for this fiscal year coming forward. That's it. And that the kids, I just want to make sure that all the time, that the kids get the best education. And I think that type of standard operating procedure from a year-to-year basis has to happen. And I know that you guys have good ongoing conversations. I think everything should be looked at every single year. Most of it, like you just said, yeah. Some HR, you're probably never going to be able to consolidate. Some finance, you're never going to consolidate. But you got to be able to look at everything, right? Because long term, you know, this is a significant budget request increase in the history of Stratford, right? And I know, coming off the 6 years on the council, that what the town finances look like, what the town projected finances look like, what the town expected general operating balances and revenue and tax increases look like from economic development and whatnot. And 6.6 is a lot of money. And, you know, I understand what we need to do and what we're coming out of, I get it. But a 6.6 and a 6.6 and a 5% is not sustainable long term. And as soon as people realize that over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's what I'm saying, it is just not fiscally sustainable for the town of Stratford. I think that's when we really can do the best work together, because that's what we're all here to do, to make sure that we give the best budget that keeps the teachers employed, keeps everybody going, and gives them the best of the kids. So I just think everything needs to be overturned, everything needs to be looked at every single year, and that was my point.
And I agree.
Thank you.
And so do I. You know, we are always open for suggestions, ideas, and working together.
Other questions? Mr. O'Brien?
Hey Pam, this is minor compared to the rest of the budget, but on page 3 of account explanations are the coaches and coordinators, Bunnell and Stratford Higher. Is that the only spot the coaches are listed in the budget?
I'm just going back to where you are.
Page 3 on the.
Yes, that is where the coaches are, and that increase there obviously is the athletic director.
I got thinking about coaches because we were talking about compensation, unemployment compensation. Coaches are hired yearly, aren't they? Individual contracts, and then they could file for unemployment at the end of the season?
Normally they could, but what they're really collecting on, I think more often than not, is if they had a full-time job and now they are, for whatever reason, in between jobs and they collect, we will have to pay a small portion, but it kind of amazes me that it even shows up on our unemployment invoice. So, yeah.
Well, that's true. Most of the coaches would be working full-time, and this is like a stipend.
It's just a stipend, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Anyone else? Just for you?
Just one quick question, just thinking, Just a question to the unemployment again. I know you mentioned about the ESSER. Does the same apply to the Alliance?
Any employee that is employed with us will collect unemployment.
Being that, again, from the grant standpoint.
Yeah, it doesn't
So
matter
ESSER and
what
Alliance,
funding source is.
the state doesn't differentiate between, okay, thank you.
Ms. Lance?
Yes, I'll talk. Have we taken into consideration, kindergarten registration for next year and how that's gonna impact the elementary schools?
It's actually just begun, and we are monitoring it very carefully. So yes, we are watching that carefully. I think one of two things, and I will defer to Heather, but one of two things is going to happen at this point. We're either going to have a lot more students in kindergarten or a lot more students in the pre-K program, depending upon waiver requests. And the age adjustment is definitely going to have some kind of factor.
We're nearing 50 waiver requests already, so the
Thank you.
numbers are going
That
up.
was the other question I was gonna ask.
Mr. Fiat?
The article that was in the paper the other day about the long-term projections from the, forgive me, the group that you guys hired, the consultant.
Slam.
The consultant. Thank you. That report's due out when to you guys, or has it been published?
They haven't actually given us a complete report. We did send you an executive summary to the planning committee.
Okay.
And we just had a meeting with them this morning where they're going to be providing some additional information. They're working through plant planning, and then once plant planning finalizes their portion with a recommendation, it will go to the board.
It did go to the, I think it did go to the board, the members of planning, maybe we can share it with the entire finance
Yeah.
committee, just so they
Good
can
idea.
kind of see some of the information they've presented to date.
My question where I was going with it is, and I have not read it, forgive me if it's in there. The scope of the data, how deep does it go, and does it give projections on a year-to-year basis about shifting of resources and assets, mainly pertaining to staffing? You know, like, the way I read that is over the next few years, the high schools are going to get larger. They're going to start to see the grammar schools on the lower end over the next 5 to 7 years. That's from what I read in the paper. So, do they offer that type of recommendations, or does this not go to that scope?
What they're actually doing is, and I think what you're referring to is their enrollment projections
Right.
over the next 10 years. And it did look like there was going to be a bubble, but then it was going to decrease district-wide.
Right.
What they're doing for us is, at this point, trying to equalize our schools so that, particularly our elementary schools, and then those schools feeding into our middle and high schools so that there's more balanced enrollment, more racial balance. And this is something that I'm probably just putting a cart before the horse, but we are looking at this point with the scenarios. You sent them back as planning committee members to look at various scenarios, which they shared with us today, how they're going to approach that. And now we're bringing in our partners at Durham to at least give us an idea if there's going to be a financial impact for buses in one scenario versus the other. So if there's a potential for savings, obviously, I'm sure everybody, if it's the right fit, might lean towards that. We really don't know. It's premature at this point, but I don't so far see anything that gives me concern for a large increase in teaching staff, for example. I mean, we have contractual limits within our teachers' contract on how large classrooms can be, and that worries me a little bit because we try really hard not even to get close to that whenever we can avoid it. But we do need to equalize district-wide.
Thank you.
One of the nice things, I don't know if you read it, but it was in the SLAM report, is how well we utilize all of our facilities. I think if I remember correct, Chapel is used at about 63% in some of our schools. I think Eli Whitney was our best utilized, at pretty close to Johnson's packed, but I think, so anyways, it was interesting too to see how well the buildings are being utilized and where we can get better usage of those spaces, so.
Any further questions? I have a few, just to clarify, a few things. The positions that are currently in Alliance or proposed to go to Alliance, are they in the operating budget that we're seeing?
No.
They're not. Okay. The second question is the CIAs on page 32 that we were bringing back, the big jump there
Yeah,
for
the 25.
40%. Yeah, the 25. Are those required positions?
Yes.
And those are mostly one-to-ones, you said?
Yeah. We
Okay.
are working on that language and trying to utilize people to their best ability, so,
Absolutely.
but yes.
One more question on the special ed teachers' salaries. What is the teacher transition program? That jumped quite a bit as well.
What page?
25, sorry.
Oh, that's the new teacher for our transition program, Strive.
Oh, okay, all right, good, that's great.
Yes, that's your new teacher.
Okay. So that's part of that 310. Okay. And then that was all I had. Okay. Anything else for anybody? Mr. Hendrick?
Yeah, Ms. Mancini, I know at our board meetings, you present us a budget worksheet that shows expenditures encumbered, so we can kind of see where dollars are being spent. Can we get to the other members of the board, maybe even at our next meeting, just that sheet that you would give us at the board, so we can all kind of see where we are proportionally, how our expenditures are going, so we can maybe get a better.
It's actually just your monthly financial report, but it'll be year to date.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Good. Anyone else? Ms. Carabinian?
Yeah, just a quick question, just to clarify. I know we were talking about like everything that's been in ESSER and, you know, what we can move to Alliance. Last year, did we, correct me if I'm wrong, did we move like the humanities department heads and the DEI coordinator from ESSER to the Alliance grant last year?
We did. We started to make that move last year.
Okay.
I think Mr. Brennan's question about the flow of where things are will
Yeah.
help clarify some of that as well.
Be happy to put that together.
Great. Again.
If not, we'll turn it over to Ms. Borges for curriculum. And the curriculum is in your appendix, page. Yes, you can just email it. Page 140.
Okay, this curriculum part of your budget isn't talking about the instructional supplies or the reading program or anything to that nature. This part of your curriculum budget is about our in-service training, our professional development, what we do for our teachers, for our administrators, and how we maybe write or develop curriculums. Okay, so as you are looking at this, it took me, this was not typically my area to do, so this is my area to unwind and figure out what is there so that you guys can have a better understanding. And it took me a few minutes, and we have thankfully had the entire teaching and learning department show up tonight in case you guys have specific questions you would like to ask them, that they will be more than prepared to answer for you. But essentially on our budget areas, so our elementary, our middle, and our high school all go to similar trainings, but they are broken down in their own budgetary buckets, okay? So when I talk to you about trainings, I am talking to you about PMT training, I am talking to you about Open SIAD, I am talking to you about Read 180 and dyslexia training. These are the trainings we provide for our staff in order to provide for our students the highest level of the education that they need, okay? And we break that down again, elementary, middle, high school, and then administrative. And then there is a bucket of money that we use to develop curriculums over the summer. Okay, and those are how we pay our teachers to come in and do writing, or pay department heads or other people to come in and write and develop those curriculums. So there's not a ton of other things to this. And again, I can read off for you the professional developments if you'd like to know what they do. And I will have to ask these guys to explain a couple of them, because there's a lot of acronyms, but I'm happy to read them to you if you would like. Do you guys have any questions about the professional development area of curriculum? Again, this is not your, this says curriculum, but we're not talking about purchasing of the reading program or anything to that nature in this budget object code. Look at Pam, I'm using the word object code.
You're growing. The only thing I would highlight is the contractual professional development is in the teacher's contract.
Yes.
That dollar amount is set to reimburse teachers for courses that they take up to that dollar.
I have a question. What out of those professional developments for teachers is required by state or contract, teacher's contract, whatever it is?
Who would like to take that?
There's nothing specifically that's required, but it is good to look at your actual curriculum and see how much capacity building you can afford to make so that you're prepared for any mandates that do come down the pipe.
And some of it is, I'll give you one example of a required one, is our PMT training. That is required.
Okay.
So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That has to be done. And then obviously, we want to make sure our teachers are trained in dyslexia. Our teachers have Read 180 training. We want to make sure that they go to Open SIAD. We want to make sure they have access to those.
So if a teacher, you've mentioned the dyslexia training a few times, are all the teachers in the district trained on dyslexia, or is it a few and then they bring that back to the district?
So we try to train a group or cohort of teachers every year. And so we are trying to expand the number of teachers that are, have Wilson training or have Orton Gillingham training. We are trying to just build our capacity to better service our students. So we have a group of teachers based on what's budgeted that we try to send each year.
I could expand upon it, Ms. Vidal. Don't forget there's several mandates and curricular changes that are coming down the pipe. The state has also posted a lot of model curricula that we are now obligated to kind of align to now. So therefore we're planning ahead, so to speak, to prepare for it.
And those first three lines are actually salary line items for curriculum writing, which obviously needs to happen.
Yeah, I was looking at the lower ones mostly, yeah.
It also includes things like AP training, so if we have new teachers coming in to do AP, we send them to Taft so that they're trained and prepared to teach it.
I don't know if you guys heard her, but she said that AP training as well.
Is it,
Yep.
Just out of
Clarify for you, just because it's my area. Certification for programs like for dyslexia training, like such as Wilson or Orton Gillingham, those you have to go through specific services to get certified in and trained by. It's not one of those things that you can send a group, get them trained, and then they can turnkey it. You have to go through that program and have to maintain that certification through that.
Yeah, there's two types. You can be trained and you can be certified. Right now in Stratford, we're trying to build our number of certified teachers and not just trained teachers.
And that's an ongoing,
It's ongoing.
how often is certification?
So you get certified and there's like fees to that to get the certification, it's like a whole process. But then you have to continue to, like I know with the Wilson certification, you have to earn 50 credits over a 5-year period. So you have to attend different workshops or different trainings throughout. Some are low cost, some are higher cost, but it's something to help maintain the certification of the currently trained staff members, but then to Heather's
Build.
point, you need to build the capacity so that every school has enough service providers to provide the service for the amount of students that require it.
Yes.
Just had a question. Are the teachers, are they given the opportunity to be bold on what they find the most value from in terms of all the different certifications and ongoing development?
I can speak specifically from special education, and then I will let them speak to the teaching and learning department. So when I am looking at professional development, growth, training, and certifications that are going to service students that have exceptionalities, yes, I send it out. We talk about what's useful, what's not useful, how we're going to better utilize or where we can overlap. So we found trainings that both our social workers and our speech can use and overlap that way. And so would you guys like to speak to how you find out from your teachers what they need? We also base it on need. So you're hearing the word dyslexia a lot because our number of students that have it has increased, so we have needed to make sure we are certified to work with our students. Do you guys anyone want to take a little bit?
Sure, I can start. So we do have teachers that come forward. I oversee the reading teachers as well as the elementary teachers. So they'll come forward and say, there seems to be a need in whatever it is. So what we do, my job is to reach out to people and say, are you interested in providing professional development from within, or is there somebody we need from the outside? So for instance, Read 180, for our reading teachers, grades 7 through 12, it's important that we have training for them every year. The program changes, the platform changes, and the student need changes in front of them. So that's teachers telling me that's something that they need. Once we have that information from teachers, we bring it to the PDEC committee. And the PDEC committee oversees the process of what we're putting forward, and they vote on is more professional development needed in other areas, and that's our job to go out and see what else is needed for the district. So that's one example of how we talk about professional development.
And if you were to visit Stratford on our full day professional development day, you may see many teachers who have gone to get training, turnkeying and running professional development for staff that's here. So we do ask that as we learn and grow, that we continue to share that with those of us that are working here so we can all learn. So, there is a reduction in this budget. I think this department did a nice job going through and making sure that we are not over budgeting for things. So you will see they do have a reduction, but it is important for us to continue supporting our teachers and our administrators in their professional growth.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, so, I know you spoke about teachers, professional development. I know they have days, where they'll go through, not a day off, but they're not in the classroom, they go through the professional development. Do you guys as administrators, I didn't want to answer this, but do you as administrators attend professional development programs, or how do you?
Yes.
From your level up to the superintendent, how does that professional development process work?
So we have administrative professional learning days as well. They just typically happen the 3 days before school starts, or days after school starts. Our administrators have longer work years in which we schedule professional development, which we call our professional learning days. In addition to those professional learning days, and I can give you an example, so I saw a need that our administrators, our wonderful principals, got to learn a little bit more about special education law. So we did a professional development on special education law so that they would understand their responsibilities in that aspect. That was one of our professional learning days. But in addition to our professional learning days, where we often turnkey the things that we have learned about or we know about, administrators do often go to other professional developments where they would turn those in, request to go there, get them approved just like teachers would, and then they would go out to go learn. So I try really hard at least once a year to go to the Special Education Congress, which is an outside professional development that allows me to continue to stay up to date on the bigger aspects of my job. And these guys have all been to different trainings in order to make sure they're up to date on their curricular areas. So we do try to make sure that we can accommodate. We obviously cannot accommodate everything, and sometimes we don't have the funds to do that, but it is important for us to have a base to be able to support the growth, the professional learning growth of our teachers, of our administrators, of our paraprofessionals. We have requirements now, it was 18 hours a year, in order for us to provide 18 hours a year of professional development for our paraprofessionals. So there are requirements we have to hit too.
How much time do you typically, or how often do you as an administrator, how often do you go to a professional development type of a program?
A professional development, Mike, that I'm asking the district to fund and pay for, I probably go once a year.
Okay.
A professional development, I do that every day.
Okay.
On my own, because we are professionals who are always trying to grow and learn. But that's an everyday event.
Okay. So, and I know does our assistant, so you said get approved, is that an approval that's given by the superintendent?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I know in the superintendent's contract, he needs to get approval for the board to attend.
That's my understanding. So if one of the teaching and learning administrators wanted to go to professional development, they would turn in their request, it would get approved by their supervisor and then by the superintendent as well, and then they could attend their professional development. That's the process we work for the members that, the superintendent is the Board of Education's only employee.
Yeah.
So we all answer to our superintendent to get our professional development approved.
So, because I don't remember ever, and I don't know where it would even be in the budget, I don't ever remember voting on professional development for our superintendent. Does he not attend? I know years ago there was a big issue with Janet Robinson and the large number of professional development she was attending, and I think somebody had told me that's when they added that into his contract. Does he not attend professional development, or do we?
Can't really speak to that. I don't know. I think somewhere in this budget line, Pam, there is a small amount of money that is delineated for that.
No, there is a separate line that you'll be addressing in the 500 object
500s.
on Monday evening. And the current superintendent has spent some funding through that account. There's a line item that the board approved there as well. And, it's actually, I don't know what page it's on right now, but it's a 590 object code, so it would be in the 500s, and it ends in 0758. Let's see if I can quickly find it for you.
Is that conference workshop services?
Yeah.
It's on page
Yeah, that's it.
86.
It's on page 86, and then you will see it further broken down on page 90.
I will say it is important for all levels, straight up through the superintendent, to continue to grow and learn.
Okay.
So it is important for people to attend learning opportunities.
So that conference workshop services would be the line item for the superintendent's professional development?
No, it's not just the superintendents, that's most of cabinets, and as well as any, let me just see, I have a note here somewhere. It is for CAVE, for all of you when you attend CAVE every year. So there's funding there. There's funding for the American School Association of School Administrators, which would be the assistant superintendent and anyone else that they deem that there's topics relative to helping. There's also money in there, $5,500 for water, food, and miscellaneous meeting supplies that we have for the board meetings as well.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different things in that account, but there's about $15,000 in there for superintendent conferences.
Okay, so apparently we're gonna be addressing, I just brought it up because I didn't see.
No, that's
where-
fine. Monday night, we will definitely be
Okay.
looking at
So then can we get a breakdown of that line item where those
Certainly can.
dollars and cents are spent? Yeah. Thank you.
I'm gonna go take my seat. You can keep
Right.
asking
Yeah.
questions, but I'm gonna sit down.
Any further questions?
I just had one last slide, which I don't even have to put up. It's simply reminding you of what we are covering on Monday evening, which is our next budget workshop, and it is in your books as well, but it's going to be the review of purchased professional services, which is object code 300. We'll be looking at the facilities budget. Mr. Ruggiero will be here to present that to you, along with property services and utilities. And then we will take a very close look at the review of the special education budget, the transportation budget, the tuition budget, and other purchase services, which is where some conferences and workshops are budgeted. So needless to say, we have a lot to cover on Monday night. It really is another big portion of the budget, and there will be a lot of information provided to you. So as you perhaps over the weekend take a look at those areas, the 300s, 400s, 500s in your budget books. If you do have any questions and you want any more detailed information on any line item, just let us know.
If there's no further questions, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Well, I wanted, under discussion.
Oh, okay,
I'd like to share something about this process.
Sure.
This person said, I thought March Madness was about college basketball. I had no idea budgeting was a blood sport. This person was also shocked at how school budgets pit groups of residents against each other and condemned what was called despicable and defamatory behavior by some residents. And let me see, go to the next section here. This is timely. Stressed there's no fat in the school system's request for upcoming fiscal year. It represents a 6.89% increase over the current fiscal year. And the town administrator said, the town is being hurt by the continuing decline in aid of the state educational cost sharing grant. This is April 22nd, 2004. So things are still about the same.
20 years later. Huh?
Yeah.
I just want to share, though, that I am appreciating that everybody here, despite whether our views are similar or different, we are all working together, and I feel that, and I feel that I have the ability to share and speak with each of you, and I think you're all being very civil and wonderful with each other, and I love and I hope that we can continue to do that. That is vitally important, because things have not changed, Mr. O'Brien, and it is a difficult topic, and we are talking about our human capital, our people, our employees, and our students. So it is heartfelt. And we all have different beliefs. And I said that on day one, that we're gonna have differences of opinions. We just need to work together because the ultimate goal is the same, to do the best we can and to be fiscally responsible to our town. So, and I know we can do that, and I am very pleased to be working with all of you to come and do this.
And I agree, because on the way here tonight, I was thinking how comfortable I am in the situation.
Yeah, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna work together.
Mr. Henry.
So, since we're all patting each other on the back, I just be remiss to not highly commend Ms. Borges for her hard work and dedication. We have developed a relationship with her over the last 2 years. Her creativity and willingness to look at new and creative solutions to create better programs while creating savings, and she's doing this. She got thrust into this position less than a month ago. She's doing a phenomenal job with it. On the council, I sat through 7 budgets and 2 on the board, and this has to date been the best process I've seen, the most open, and she has brought those solutions here, and I think as this process develops, I think she will help us find some new pathways to maintain, as Mr. Pia said, a fiscally sound budget, but creating the best service. So I'd be remiss not to thank you for your dedication and hard work and your creativity and commitment to Stratford. So
I am happy to help Stratford. I really don't like compliments, so let's have that one be the last one while we work through the rest of this.
You've earned it, thank you.
All right, one final call for questions or any other statements? Mr. Henrik is cut off.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. O'Brien, second by Mr. Pia. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?